to start, Robert, do you want to tell the group a little about yourself, who you are, who Food Connect is?
Cool. So I'm an ex-dairy farmer from Western Victoria. So milked conventional cows, took over from my father, fourth generation. So I was the fourth generation farmer, third generation who went into dairy farming. But I had 10 years off the farm because I'm the oldest of 9 kids, and went and did aircraft engineering for a while. So when I come back to the farm, I obviously learned a fair bit off Dad. Share farmed. I don't know if you know. Do any of you know about share farming? Share farming. It's a concept, particularly in dairy farming world, where you get 5% of the profits is your first year's wage, and the next year you migrate up to you go to 33% of the profits, and all the calves, and every second calf is yours. Every second calf, so you start to build up a bit of a herd, and then 3 or 4 years later, depending on how you go, you generally go to 50% of the profits, but you take over all. But you're running the whole farm yourself. In dairy farming, they've got a really good progression up to eventually where your herd becomes, and you get all the calves. When you're at 50%, all the calves become yours, but you have to supply your own dog, your own four-wheel, your own vehicles, and generally the share farmer who owns the farm, they'll milk cows for you every month, so you get a weekend off basically every month. Is the way it's meant to be, and then in about 10 years. You generally have enough cows to sell to buy the whole farm. So that was the rule of thumb back 30 or 40 years ago. It doesn't work anymore. There's just not as much money in cows or in farming or in calves. So after about 3 years with Dad, I wanted to move towards organic farming, and Dad wasn't too happy with that. He was interested, but he was just too tired and old, and so I took the farm down that pathway, and really learned a lot about that was where I started to learn a lot about the world and how the world was made up, and also in particular the time I'd left the farm to go and become an aircraft engineer. There was a lot of cooperatives. There was 5 to 6 cooperatives: a creamery, ice cream factory, milk factory, cheese factory, and just the plain old milk, where the milk was done. And when I come back 11 years later, there was only one big cooperative, and it was and they had a lot of control, and it had become corporatised, and there was executives, and we were selling, internationally, marketing a lot of milk internationally, and it was very it was really hard to have a say in my co-op. It was meant to be a co-op, but it was really difficult to have a say, us farmers. So I started to look at where the challenges were in the food system, and the biggest one was distribution. That was where the power was being played out, and I felt that so a group of us farmers got together, and we'd heard about this concept called CSA, dairy farmers, and we started to play around with that idea or learn about it, and we had plans to completely separate ourselves from our big milk co-op and go alone and go organic, and so this is back in the early or mid-90s. But unfortunately 3 years of drought, we all had 3 years of drought, really made us we had to lay off employees and just totally focus on the farm, and not put a lot of time and effort into that plan. And besides, the drought actually drained us all the funds, so we didn't have the money to actually invest in a little processing plant, and we're going to have a little, on the main highway, calves where people could drop in and look at the calves and see where their milk come from and buy milk. Just a good old-fashioned roadside stall on the Princess Highway. So all those plans fell by the wayside, and I eventually lost the farm, which was a blessing in disguise, even though it was as tragic as what it was. And I had no house, I had nothing, no farm, no nothing. I had $90,000 worth of debt. It actually got me away from milking cows and all the stress that was involved. And it gave me the time to look at other models. So that was where after I'd licked my wounds and got my head sort of straight a little bit, I started to research different how all around the world. So I read 40 Centuries of Farming. I don't know if you Chinese, 40 Centuries of Farming is a landmark book written in 1901 by he was the head of the Minister of Agriculture for the US. He actually retired from his position because he was so in love with the way the Chinese farmed for 40 centuries, and he called it 40 Centuries of Farming. These guys are farming that way. If you read 40 Centuries of Farming, that's basically how they're doing it. I basically read everything that I could on all the models that were practiced and all about agriculture and the last 10,000 years, and how grains had basically monopolised humans. We think us humans have monopolised grains, but really grains, if you do take a more holistic approach, you can see that actually grains have really have manipulated humanity into being a very lazy, sedentary, pretty sick bunch of people.
Is that how you started?
Yeah, so that was right. So that through that process, I started my own CSA in Tasmania, little market garden similar to these guys, about a 1 acre plot, and sold direct. Same thing, just making it up as I went. Selling it to a couple of restaurants. Had people visit the farm. It wasn't far from the centre of Hobart. It was literally 12 minutes. I could be in 12 minutes, the centre of Hobart in 12 minutes and sell direct. And then I started to set these little CSAs up all over the place. And 7 years later, it dawned on me, after really inquiring more into the CSA, the traditional CSA model, community supported agriculture model, was that one farmer supplying whatever it was, a heap of city families, sequentially for 52 weeks of the year was a pretty tall order for any farmer, let alone an Australian farmer in the conditions that we farm in. And I thought, maybe we need to have more farmers join that CSA. So Food Connect was, I think it was pretty much the first multi-farmer CSA in the world.
So can you explain how Food Connect works?
Yeah.
How it does that?
Yeah. So basically, it's basically the same as what these guys do, except instead of one farm and a little bit of a top up from us, I engaged with originally 7 farms. So 7 farmers who grew pretty much everything for a veggie box. They formed it. And then the missing piece for us too was how we're going to distribute this produce. Originally we were going to home deliver, but then because we had a whole bunch of mums who were picking up from the farm, and then after about 3 weeks with kids and travel and all that sort of stuff, they got jack of that. You all understand what got jack of means? Got sick of it. They just went, no, this is got knobs on it. You know what that means? Got knobs on it.
We've had a lesson in slave, but not enough, I don't think.
Difficult. This is very difficult. So they said if you can get all that produce, because they were basically getting all their neighbours and friends involved. They said, if you can get all that produce to our house, we'll do the rest. And I went, oh, that's a great model. So that was like a drop-off point or a pick-up spot for neighbourhoods. And then about 2 nights later, I was having a beer with one of the farmers, and the farmer said to me, he said, we should name these mums, drop-off points, give them something, a nice sexy name. And overnight that night, I woke up in the middle of the night and went, City Cousins. I've got to call them City Cousins, because in Australia and America, people who live out in the country are called country cousins. So I thought I'd invert that and turn them into our farmers' city cousins. So that stuck, and that's our distribution model. So
tell us about the size of Food Connect now.
So there's 70 city cousins, drop-off spots. We did get to about 80 at one stage, so that was when we were delivering around about 1,100 boxes per week, packing here, which is a lot of boxes. When I show you the packing line, it's fairly agricultural, so it's not all that fast. But and then after about 5 years, because the main employees that Food Connect had were university students who also did, music, played music, were generally environmental students. They were starting to graduate from university and get jobs. And so they couldn't work for Food Connect anymore, but they really enjoyed the 30% discount that they got on their produce. So a bunch of them tore, and there was a whole bunch of them said, who used to work for Food Connect, started up these buyers clubs, and they convinced Wade and I, who were the two guys in charge, they convinced us to give them a 30% discount, the same discount we gave to staff, to start up a buyers club in the city. And then we thought, this is I'm not very smart. It's basically you just go out there and people invent ideas for you if you engage them in the right way. And so they basically invented this buyers club thing. And then we thought, gee, this is a good idea. It's more values aligned. People get it more affordably, which was our holy grail, was how do we pay farmers affordably? How do we pay farmers fairly and provide this really top produce affordably? So people who are really trapped in a eating junk food or whatever cycle could get out of that cycle and not use price as an excuse.
So how is the Buyers Club different to the City Cousins?
So City Cousins get a box, and we pack the box for them, so it's a set box and they get it. Whereas a Buyers Club is where we sell them bulk. So 10 kilos of potatoes, 10 kilos of tomatoes, 10 kilos of cucumbers, a bag of potatoes, a box of cabbages, a box of broccoli. So they would buy in that. So for us, it's just we get it off the farmer, put it on a pallet, with all of that there, and then it goes to the Buyers Club. And then the Buyers Clubs do the distribution themselves. They do, and they're all very different. Some of them set up like a shop system where people come in and grab their broccoli and whatever they need in a basket, take it to a counter, get it all weighed and pay a price. Others, it's all pre-ordered, and everyone turns up and just goes up and down aisles and packs their own box. In other cases, they'll just have a couple of volunteers who pack everyone's boxes, and then everyone turns up and they rotate that. But there's so many. Every Buyers Club has a different governance model, a different model in terms of, are they a pop-up shop or are they just a sort of like a dumbed-down box system? And then some of them thought it was such a good idea. Or what happens is after a couple of years, the volunteer fatigue rolls in, and the 3 or 4 mums generally who are left holding the can go, oh, this sucks. We're doing all the work and we're getting nothing for it, and they turn it into a business. So we've had 5 buyers clubs who have turned into box businesses. And so in a way, they've cannibalised our retail market. But we still sell, it's our farmers that are, at the end of the day, are still supplying them. And then you've got Mika and we've got 4, 5 now mini farms like these guys who supply direct to some of those buyers clubs. And then as they learn their wings and get more confident and grow more, then they supply us. So it works both ways. So we end up with really good young farmers who necessarily at the start couldn't supply us. But with a buyers club, supplying direct to a buyers club, they build their capacity, and then they start to supply us, which is great for the food system. And buyers clubs turn into mini businesses, because our motto is the food system will only change with millions and millions of small businesses, small farmers, small buyers clubs, small box systems. We just got to rebuild the logistics together. So it's all about how do we work together to do that, and not seeing each other as competition, seeing each other as complementary to building a brand new world. In actual fact, that's, if agriculture is the basis of civilization, and civilization is pretty, what's the word without swearing? It's not doing really well. It's not very civil. Then agriculture can be the sort of vehicle that we can actually turn things around and point civilization in a better direction.
Tell us a bit about your suppliers, like how many do you have?
So there's 80 farmers, about 80 farmers and about 40 makers. So now we have a lot of makers, so people who make cheeses and sauerkrauts. But so many products now, miso.
And how do those makers, how did they become involved, and what's their role?
Yeah, so back when we started, we started 14 years ago, and it was pretty hard to find enough local farmers, let alone any makers. But over the time, as we, us and others have promoted the idea that a food system should be as local as possible, then more and more, and food, as you know, food now has become a big thing. We're just getting so many people want to be in the food space. They want to be a great jam maker or make great relishes or do a fantastic fermented chili sauce, or they want to play around with the flavours and the senses and just what's available in season. So I think people are now starting to see that the food system isn't this boring, mundane, monoculture. It's actually becoming really, really exciting and creative, and there's potentially a bit of profit in it if done the right way.
So the makers use the farm supply.
Yeah, use our farmer supply to create their produce and then sell through us. And sell through others. And we've got a kitchen downstairs which I'll show you. So a lot of makers will actually use that kitchen to start their business or to experiment or to collaborate or to promote.
So tell us about what kind of competition there is for Food Connect in this space, or who do you see any? Who do you see as a competition?
I don't really see competition. I'm a bit idealistic in that way, I suppose you could say. So, because the word competition, at its root meaning, if you go back to its origins, its Latin origins, it actually means to strive to help everyone get better. So that's what it actually means. So I mainly see not competition in the old-fashioned way of, get out of my way, I'm going to beat you with price, which is just a ridiculous notion. How are we ever going to win if we try to beat others on price? Is how do we collaborate? So how do we bring more people into the fold to say, hey, we can all win? That's my version. So you would, obviously the supermarkets are, the antithesis and who we're out to destroy, but we don't really see. We're not focused on destroying the supermarkets. We're focused on building a brand new system, and eventually they will just wither and die and be no more. If you can think, 10 to 20 years time, Amazon and Coles and Woolies, they won't be able to exist the way they are, because the way we're going at the moment, or the way they're going at the moment, is there will be no farmers, because no one can afford to farm because of the price. Because they all think that the end game is cheap food, but of course, farmers are committing suicide, and they're getting older, and there's just so many problems. So it's just impossible for that model to continue. So this new model they'll eventually have to join us, or they'll wither and disappear and be no more.
For you, it's really about sustainability.
Yes, in the true sense of the word. Yeah. It's very much focused on a big picture of holistic. How do we? Well, it's more than sustainability. It's actually how do we regenerate, and hopefully give humanity a chance to actually not go extinct.
And you're B Corp certified. Can you explain what that is?
So have you heard of B Corp certification or B? So it's a big, it's a global certification system for business to certify itself. So Danone have now become, or Danone, how do you say? Danone have become B. So a lot of big businesses now are using the B Corp certification process to prove themselves and to improve themselves over time as to how they can become a better, global citizen in terms of being a business. So we were certified 3 years ago, and we're one of the highest ratings. So in the B Corp certification, the highest number of points you can get is 200 points. You have to get to 80. So you can you can go through the B Corp process, but you can't get a certification unless you get above 80 points. And a lot of businesses just get above 80. So we scored around about 170, but we dropped down to 120 because they changed, because we don't have one of the things, they measure on 5 things: environment, community, economics, So in the community point is the community one is, do you have a dedicated cohort of people with a disability, or is it mums, or is it we don't have one of them. We just see anyone with a mouth as being a target market. Rather than sort of going, we have got a specific focus on young mums. That's our, has become more, since we've done B Corp certification, we started to think more carefully around who are we really serving the needs of, and we really think that young mums is because they're the ones who are feeding the next generation of kids to try and, give, because they're the ones who are going to eventually inherit the earth that we're currently abusing at the moment. Yeah.
And so you recently purchased this building.
Yes,
Could you tell the,
so that's very exciting.
About that?
Yeah, so we've always been, yes. Oh, we can just pull I can pop these up, actually. So save using electricity. The most exciting thing that's happened is there we go. There'll be light. So as we were talking in the early days, the model, and when I started Food Connect, I didn't start Food Connect to run Food Connect or be the owner of Food Connect or anything like that. I was really helping farmers to set up these, because my model was always that farmers should be the ones who are receiving all of the profits from what they do. And so I was basically facilitating these models, and I'd done 9 of them up until I started Food Connect. And Food Connect, being a multi-farmer model, I trained up the mothers or the wives to answer the phones and to deal with the IT, because this is 2004. So there was no Facebook and there was no social media. There was none of that. So we're talking, like VoIP phone systems weren't even around then. I don't think the iPhone was invented. I don't know, how long's the iPhone been out? You think?
I think it's sold already.
You think?
I feel like it.
You feel like it? That's a good question, isn't it? I don't know. I remember I had a bloody big old BlackBerry thing, and it was just impossible to use. No, I don't think iPhones had come. Yeah, but I do remember watching that video of that iPhone going, my God, it was just amazing. So basically what happened was that in that setting up those farmers, and then the farmers realising they didn't have the capacity to do what I had been doing for 7 years, the mothers who are in the city side, so the city cousins, they come to me about 4 or 5 weeks into the process, and they said, Rob, this is not going to work without you leading it. And I went, no, I don't want to touch it. I'd lost my farm. I was pretty scared of running a business. I was quite happy to be behind the scenes and, facilitating things, which I felt really quite dear to, that idea that I was behind the scenes, basically empowering farmers to do this model. But these Brisbane mums said, no, Rob, you need to run it, and we give you our full blessing. And so by this stage there was a few. Hello, Seba, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. So Seba's just going to set up the food for us when it arrives. Yeah, when it hasn't arrived, so you might have to. Is it from Hope Street? Yeah. So yeah. Give them a call. They shouldn't be too far away.
Thanks.
So it always been in my mind, because it's community supported agriculture. If you want to read really good business text, the model of community supported agriculture come out of 2 philosophies. One, the Schumacher philosophy of small is beautiful, economics as if people mattered. It's a beautiful text, and a lot of businesses around the world have been, a lot of good businesses have been driven by Schumacher's ideas around Buddhist economics. It's Buddhist economics, or how to run a business in a Buddhist way. And then out of Germany, Rudolf Steiner had a whole economic theory around associative economics. And I've got a whole bunch of books there, which is very, very deeply buried in occult sciences around who are we as humanity, and how should we express our humanity, unfold ourselves into the world. It's this beautiful text now, and there's a lot of businesses around the world now, a lot of banking institutions that are based on Rudolf Steiner's economic model of business, how to do a business. So it was always driven, but community supported agriculture, community is the first word, so community has always been important. And when we first started Food Connect, we didn't have the money to start the business. When I rented a warehouse, which is just not too far away from here in 2005, we had a trial period. In 2005, we had to get serious. We had no money. So we actually bravely put it out there for people to actually buy in advance. So people bought 4 weeks of produce in advance, like 3 to 4 weeks before we'd even started the business. It was like, this was real hand on your heart, I hope this works, because we rented the warehouse. Or we put down the first month's rent. And the community responded. 2 weeks out from starting the business, I had $16,000 in the bank. I hired a van off a friend of mine and went for a 1 week trip up to Bundaberg, out to like 4 hours north, 3 hours west, all the way down to Stanthorpe, all the way down to Lismore, basically enrolling, because I knew those 7 other farmers, I needed about 50 farmers. And I found the other 30 farmers, found another 30 farmers just going on that trip, and I'm going, and the ones I said, we're on, we've got $16,000 in the bank, we're going. And those original 6 city cousins basically started to tell all their friends, become a city cousin, and we were off and running. We were doing 300 boxes by about week 5. It was just extraordinary. But then when we had to move from that warehouse, which was really sort of quite not very good, and the rent tripled, I went and found this warehouse here, and my naivety, I had the 3 months rent in advance, saved up, which was $32,000. I had that money, and I gave that to the real estate agent, and then in the mail come a letter saying, now we don't need 3 months worth of bond, so the equivalent of 3 months rent in bond as your security deposit. And we didn't have that money, I didn't know that you had to do that, or you don't get to get the keys. So I put a good news, bad news story in the farm letter. We have a weekly farm letter. You would have a weekly. Yeah. Not yet. It was a bit hit and miss for us back then too. Occasionally you'd get a little time to write one up. Yeah. But anyway, I did this. This was a special one. Good news, we found a warehouse. We've got 3 months in advance rent. Bad news, we haven't got the bond. And because I went to the bank and they said no, and I went to a couple of other sort of financial types and they said no. So I went to the community, and within 2 weeks we'd raised $35,000. The 12 months. So the deal was, give us 12 months, give us the money, and 12 months down the track we'll reimburse it in food. So in produce. So we had $35,000. So we paid the bond, and like in terms of uplifting for all of our staff, and everyone was like, wow, the community loves this. So last year, 2 years ago, when the landlord said, when I convinced him to sell us the building, but we didn't have the money to buy the building, I sort of had an idea that maybe we could ask the community to buy the building off us, but I didn't know how. But anyway, we did. We went out there and asked the community to buy the building for us, $2 million, and we raised $2,100,000 in 90 days. And we learned a lot through the process. And yeah, now we own the building in equity, so no debt, all equity. Who understands the difference between debt and equity? You all understand debt and equity? I didn't know a lot about this. So don't be. I'm 56 years old, just turned, and I didn't really understand the difference between debt and equity. So debt is where you borrow the money and you pay back a certain amount every month. Equity is where you can decide to pay. It's skin in the game. Equity means you've got skin in the game. So we won't probably return a dividend for we really want to start paying dividends in the second year of operation, but for the first year we don't have to pay anything back. We can, and as you'll see, it's It's a work site down there. So that gives us the time to settle in and get new businesses in and not have to worry about paying back a bank or, you know, an institution.
So I know Robert's keen to take you on a tour. So are there any quick questions before you go on the tour? Because I'm sure that will generate more as you walk around.
Yeah, it will. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
you said you didn't have any competition. Do you think they are the competitor of your business because you guys all selling the wages to the like the city cousin, the bear clubs? They're selling the wages to there also. So is there any competition between this?
Oh, as in the city cousins who go and set up buyers clubs and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. I mean, our worst competition or our what is it?
Biggest threat?
Our biggest threat is ourselves. Yeah. We are our worst our worst friends in that context. Absolutely. Yeah. And many a business consultant has come to me and said, you know, what are you doing? That's just, you know, like we literally do. When a couple of our farmers, I didn't do it to these guys, but we had farmers in the early days. I said to all the farmers who joined us, I said, if you want to set up your own CSA, I'll give you all of our customers in that region. And so Ray and Sam, they were the first farmers. They actually started up farming when they heard me say that. Like they were originally just had jobs in town. They went and started farming, and then 2 years later rang me up and said, you know that promise you made? Yeah, and then all of a sudden we lost 30 customers, 30 retail customers overnight. And the sales team didn't know that I'd made that promise. And they come up and said, they're saying that you're going to give us their customers. And I went, oh, that's fantastic. Beauty. And they all went, what? You know, the finance person said, what? Yeah, so no, I've always been very, very conscious of to our own detriment. Luckily, I've got a really good team down there who do come in sometimes and say, Rob, that's just, you know, we just can't do that right now. Let's phase it in or phase it out over time. But sometimes, you know, when a buyers club starts up and they take 20 or 30 of our retail customers, we just have to suck it up and go with it. Yeah, but no.
Any other questions?
It's a good point though. I hadn't really sort of seen ourselves as our you know.
How did you select your city councils? Like, do
They self-select. Yeah, they self-select. Oh, we do. So the driver will go out. If a city cousin rings us and said, "I want to be a city cousin," the driver will go out and do a recon, and we'll check out stairs and lighting and, you know, where is it, and just make sure it's safe. And
so they're more like volunteers, or they're getting paid?
they get $1. They get $1 per family. Yeah, per week. Yeah. So they get a little thing. Keeps it really simple.
So you can become a city cousin.
That's right.
Or
Yeah.
get your food supplied through a city cousin.
Yeah. So a lot of city cousins said, I want home delivery. I mean, home delivery costs $10, so they get home delivery for free. Yeah, and we've just had one of our city cousins. She's been with us for 9 years. They're moving to America, and she wrote a beautiful email about the unexpected surprises and impacts it had on her family by becoming a city cousin. She didn't know about. Really, really beautiful email about all of the community. Yeah, they had a young boy. They had 2 young boys, and one died of a brain tumour when he was 5 years of age. And when that boy died, it was our community, the Food Connect community, who just pitched in and just made things. So that's the great part about our model. And going back to this original question here about where our own worst competition is, that we end up actually winning because, like in the case of Ray and Sam, when they replicated us and took our customers and started up a CSA, they actually ran the CSA better than we did. So we learnt off them how to become better at our CSA, and that gets back to the old idiom of striving to help everyone get better. Is as soon as you do, you generously hand over some part of your business because they look at me and go, oh God, we can do better than him, and then you give them that opportunity, and then you just go and watch them for a while and go, oh shit, that's great, you know, and whip it into here. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So we're all following each other. It's good. It's good fun.
Well, conscious of time, so
Yeah.
thank you, Robert.
No,
Would you like
no
to
worries.
take the
Yeah, let's go for a tour.